Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Melanie Campbell. I'm the president and CEO of the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation and the national convener for Black Women's Roundtable. It is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to our release of our BWR and Essence Power of the Sister Vote poll. I'm so delighted to have our partner with Essence, Sheila Harris, who we will introduce momentarily here to represent Essence and to be a part of this very, very important release. This is our sixth annual poll. And so we are excited to be able to share with you what are Black women thinking as we are 20 days away from the election day. But we also know we're already voting. So to give an insight as to what's driving Black women to go to the polls, what are our key concerns 1 year later? What are we concerned about as we walk into that ballot box? You know, who are we thinking about that we want to elect? You know, how is this current president doing when it comes to Black women and so many other things? And so as a co-host, it is my job to make sure that I serve as co-host and not presenter. So I'm going to now call on our partner with Essence, Sheila Harris, who's Senior Manager, PR and Strategic Communications with Essence, who will bring co-host greetings. Sheila, turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Greetings, everybody. As Melanie said, I'm so happy to be here with you today. I have to say that Essence is so proud to partner with Black Women's Roundtable on this amazing survey. Of course, we know this year there's absolutely no question that this is probably one of the most important critical elections of our lifetime. So we are so pleased to be able to partner with BWR just to find out what our community is thinking, what they're feeling. This is such a critical time. As you know, for our community, it seems like we're facing multiple pandemics, whether it's COVID-19, economic disparity, police brutality, you name it. There's just so much that's hitting us all at once. But our brand Essence has been around for 50 years. And it's ventures such as this, partnering with BWR and providing content that's going to uplift the community. That's so important to us. And we're so happy that we're able to present these findings today. I will also say, continue to look to Essence, whether on essence.com just to find out more how you can encourage your communities to vote and get out there and really spread the word. I'll also say make sure you check out our latest issue. Our digital cover features the historic Kamala Harris, who's on the cover. Plus, it features a variety of Black women who are working on the Biden Harris campaign. So, Melanie, just a special thanks and kudos to you and your team for a dynamic job. And we hope that we will continue the partnership, and we hope everybody enjoys the findings.
Thank you, Sheila. And now, drum roll, please. Drum roll. We're going to turn it over to our two of our dynamic Black Women's Roundtable members, sister leaders, and who led our research analysis on the Black Women's Roundtable side. And so we want to turn it over to Dr. Elsie Scott, founding director of the Ronald W. Walters Leadership and Public Policy Center at Howard University, and Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, president and CEO of Insight Unlimited, LLC. She wears many hats, and she also is a senior research and policy advisor for Black Women's Roundtable. And before I forget, Elsie Scott is a member, both of you all are, member of the board of directors of the National Coalitions. So we turn it over to you ladies to just drum roll and roll us out and tell us, what are Black women thinking? What do we want? Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. I am Elsie Scott, and I'm happy to start with the lead in presenting the findings of the Essence poll for this year. We are very pleased that Essence has agreed to join us again and lead with sponsoring this poll, because so many people look forward to this poll, because so many people calling me and say, are you all doing the poll this year? So I'm very happy to have been a part of this again, and happy that we have the same team together. Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, who's a fellow political scientist, and she's one of the students of Dr. Linda Williams. And some people out there remember Linda Williams from the Joint Center days, when she did a lot of the early studies around political engagement, and she partnered with Dr. Ron Walters, which I run the Ron Walters Center at Howard University. So we would like now to present the findings, because I know that you've been sitting and waiting to see what's the difference in 2020 from when we started 5 years ago. Can we get share the screen with the slides, please? We're going to display the slides because we think that this would help you, because we do have a lot of numbers and figures, and we think that it would help you to absorb it better if we put our slides up. Oh, we just can't see them. Okay. All right. Well, this is our 6th year of partnering with Essence. And we've been doing this the Power of the Sister Vote poll. And when we first started doing this, Black women were not as much in the news as we are now. Now in 2020, everybody is talking about Black women. And in part, it may be because there's a Black woman on one of the tickets running for president, but also because Black women have increased their political engagement. And so it's very important for this poll, where we look beyond just how many came out to vote, but to also look at what are their concerns, what are their attitudes, and what are the opinions of Black women from across the country. So this survey was conducted between August 27th and September 28th. And we had a total of 1,100 respondents, Black women who were 18 and above. And clearly, one thing that comes out very clear is that 95% of the respondents plan to vote. So the goal of our survey is to collect information on Black women, the issues that are important to them, as well as how they plan to vote. And so we've also looked at what are the top issues that Black women feel are threatening their families, as well as the top issues that they feel are threatening our democracy. And as we've done for the last 4 years, we have had them to voice their opinion on the Trump presidency and identify what are the priorities that will drive them to the polls this year. Next slide. Okay, so we mentioned that we did the first poll in 2015. And so we've seen some changes over this 6 year period. So in the first study, we learned that 64% of Black women saw voting as very important. And I think that also in that year, we were looking at the older Black women, especially, saw this as a responsibility because so many Black people had died, so many Black people had suffered for the right to vote. Black women overwhelmingly at that time believed that the Democratic Party best represented their interests, and only 1% in 2015 trusted the Republican Party. And affordable health care was the top issue of concern for Black women. In 2016, we did our second study, and this, as you know, was the last presidential election cycle. And we saw that during that time, support for the Democratic Party, belief that the Democratic Party represented Black people best. The 85% of women in that survey felt like the Democratic Party best represented them. And affordable care continued to be the top issue of concern for Black women as they went out to vote. In 2017, we did our third study, and this showed that Black women were actively involved in their communities in all kinds of ways. And many of them were interested in running for political office. And as we look this year, we see the result of that. We have so many women running for political office in 2020. But there was a significant decline of 11% in confidence in the Democratic Party, that especially more of the younger women were beginning to look more at being independent and not feeling that the Democratic Party represented their interests as much as the older women. Trump received a failing grade from Black women for his first year in office. And there was still a top issue being affordable care, but now criminal justice reform was now tied with affordable health care as top issues of concern. And these were followed by living wage jobs, quality public education, tied for the top three issues of concern. And a third of Black women were concerned about hate crimes. This was an issue that we added new to the survey in 2017. In 2018, we did our fourth study. We identified as I mentioned that in 2017, we added hate crime. So now we saw that hate crime rose to the number one issue of concern, rising 22 points over 2017. Affordable care, healthcare continued to be at the top, but it dropped from number one. And criminal justice and policing reform, as well as gun violence, became our second and third priorities. In 2018, we did our fifth study, and the top concern had now shifted to criminal justice and policing reform. And then the Affordable Care Act had dropped down to number two. And the rise in hate crimes and equal rights and equal pay were now our third priorities. Next slide. Okay, what we're going to do now is Dr. DeWeaver is going to go through the key findings we have for 2020, and we'll be able to look at what's the difference in what we found for 2020 as opposed to the previous years. And then we'll come back at the end and talk about some of the specific issues. Dr. DeWeaver.
Thank you, Dr. Scott. We have some really amazing findings to share with you with regards to what Black women want in 2020. And the first is a finding that definitely echoes what we've seen in terms of the level of civic engagement that we typically find with Black women when it comes to elections. We show up and we show out. If we could make sure that we have that slide up with the key findings. So we know, first of all, that Black women are especially likely to say that they are ready to vote. Black women are definitely fired up and ready to vote. They are fully 95% of whom have indicated that they do in fact plan to vote in the 2020 elections. Black women have also indicated that they will vote for the candidate who commits to the following key issues that they care about. So one thing that we know over the years is that Black women are very practical and issue-oriented voters. And the most important issues to them, we'll go through this in more detail later, but the most important issues that will be driving their vote in November are, first of all, the candidate that produces a plan to reduce structural and systemic racism. 49% indicated that as their top issue, as compared to 45% who indicated that policing and criminal justice reform were key issues that would be driving their vote, followed by nearly a third who indicated that it was very important to have a candidate that would produce a plan to eradicate COVID-19, that specific issue would in fact be driving their vote. We can advance. Now, in terms of those issues that Black women indicated were those issues that they believe were the most pressing issues facing the Black community writ large today, we found that far and away, Black women were most concerned about basic survival and safety issues, as well as issues around stability for their community. So overwhelmingly, some 58% of Black women said that their top concern facing Black communities today was rise in hate crimes and racism and the rise in hate crime. And that is a huge, huge number. We've seen that number go up dramatically above the 42% who indicated that that was the case just 1 year ago. And so that's become an even more pressing issue, moving that to the top of the list of concerns of Black women as it relates to those various issues impacting the Black community. Coming in second was the issue of criminal justice and policing reform. That's only a 1-point difference from last year. So Black women, it's not as if Black women are less concerned about that issue. The issue is they're that much more concerned about racism and rising hate crimes. We see both of these issues as issues that Black women are suggesting are, quite frankly, life and death issues. So this really indicates that Black women definitely are concerned with survival. Coming in third was this issue of affordable housing. 28% indicated that that is a top issue facing the Black community today. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. Affordable health care. 28% said that that's the key issue facing the Black community today. So, and when you think about that, all of these issues are really around safety and survival. And when you put that into the broader context of everything that's happening right now, a Supreme Court case that we're about to see impacting the Affordable Care Act, this issue of affordable health care being the third priority for Black women, I think is very, very resonant given what's going on today. Overall, I would just say when we look at these issues that we've touched on now for 6 years, and just kind of analyze it writ large, what we find very interesting, and we pointed out here in the findings here, is that Black women's issue concerns or issue preferences have shifted slightly between an Obama administration and a Trump administration. During the Obama years, when we first started this survey, we saw that Black women were particularly concerned about issues that were very important issues, a lot of issues that we still talk about today in politics, things like affordable college, things like quality education, things like paid family leave. Like they address those types of issues ranked higher in order of importance with regards to Black women in those years. But in these years, they have, compared to other issues, have gone down in order of importance. I would argue likely not because they're any less important to Black women, but the issue is that under the Obama administration, it appears that there was maybe a sense of aspirational things that people could push for if they believe their basic needs were taken care of and their basic safety and survival mechanisms were a given. Under this administration, though, that shift has been much more, as we mentioned previously, when you saw that layout of the data, it's about being able to live. It's about not being murdered as a result of being a victim of a hate crime or being murdered as a result of being a victim of police violence, quite frankly. So these life and death issues have really come to the fore in recent years under the Trump administration. And we're seeing that shift very clearly when you look at the data that we produced longitudinally over the course of the 6 years that we've been conducting this survey. With that said, we can advance to the next slide. Okay, so our next slide looks at young Black women's concerns around the community. And so here we were able to look at both Generation Z and millennials. And what we found was very interesting, probably different to what many people might expect. We actually found that there was a lot of agreement across the generations around what issues were most important for Black women as it relates to both Gen Zs and millennials. Racism and the rise in hate crime was the top issue that they identified was concerning them as it relates to issues impacting the Black community. Both generations also indicated that criminal justice and policing reform were the second most critical issue. However, millennials were slightly more likely than Gen Zs to indicate that was their second issue. We did see a little bit of a difference in terms of priorities when you disaggregated across the two generations in terms of their third priorities. For Gen Z, there was a three-way tie for third priority with affordable health care, unemployment, and underemployment, as well as violence against women and girls, whereas millennials identified a singular issue as their third priority, and that was this issue of equal rights and equal pay. Over a third identified that as a key issue of concern and priority as it relates to the Black community. We can advance from there. Now, in terms of, this is a slightly different question. Here, we're not just asking Black women, what do they think are their top concerns for the Black community writ large? Here, we're asking, what are the top concerns for them and their families? So now we're looking at a very, very personal perspective of how issues impact their lives. And here we saw, too, that the very top issue that Black women indicated they believe impacts themselves and their families was, once again, the rise in hate and racism and hate crimes in America, 58%. Huge, huge number. That was only eclipsed by COVID-19. 45% said that they saw that as a key issue impacting their families and themselves. And third came the high cost of housing. So being able to have housing stability also was very important personally for these women. And we know right now that this is a key issue that many Americans are dealing with. With that said, we can advance. Now, this is a more robust example of where women fell around a variety of issues. I just mentioned the top three issues, but other issues that were important to them, I'll just briefly lift up a couple more. Right after number 3, housing, was income inequality and equal pay. We do know that Black women suffer a double wage gap by both race and gender, and that's still a very important issue to them. About a third mentioned that that is an issue that impacts themselves and their families, followed only by unemployment slash underemployment. So, and then gun violence. So there are a lot of issues that are critical to Black women. And I think all of these issues we know are especially heightened given everything that we're seeing right now, not related to, quite frankly, the COVID economy. We can push forward from there. Now, when we look at Black women continue to see, when we look at issues that Black women indicate most likely threaten democracy, what we found was that Black women indicated, we go back to that slide, that the top issue that they saw as literally threatening democracy was, once again, the rise in racism and hate crimes. They saw that as a top threat to democracy, 73%, which is an amazing number. Almost 3 out of 4 Black women indicated that racism and the rise in hate crimes was a threat to democracy. Now, that is, though, lower than the proportion who saw that to be the case in 2019, just a year ago. Ranking second this year, though, was this issue of corruption in government. 63% of Black women saw that as a key threat to democracy, followed by voting rights and voter suppression tactics. 55% indicated that issues regarding voter suppression, for example, is a key issue that's threatening democracy. You can move forward. Other issues I'll just lift up really quickly. Next was rollback in civil rights protection. Some 42% mentioned that. Some 30% mentioned the COVID pandemic as a threat to democracy. One might wonder if that is in any way connected to the earlier issue that was mentioned around voting suppression tactics, which it very well could have been. With that, we will advance. Advancing the other direction. I think we went backwards a slide. Oh, no, that's right. You're exactly right. So the next slide has to do with confidence in the Democratic Party. Now, this is an issue that we have examined for several years, and we've noted that in recent years, the confidence of Black women in the Democratic Party had, in fact, been going down. But in this year, it actually went down a little bit more, from 73% in the previous 2 years to 71%. So the Democratic Party has some more work to do, it seems, when it relates to gaining and earning the confidence of Black women. The question specifically pertains to asking Black women which party they believe best represents their interests. And it seems as if, though the majority of Black women do indicate the Democratic Party would be that party, the level to which Black women coalesce around that particular belief has been falling in recent years and continues to fall. We can move forward. What's particularly interesting is if we disaggregate that by generations, we find that the level to which one is confident in the Democratic Party as being the best party to represent your interests varies widely based upon your generation. So seniors are most likely to say that's the case. Some 87%, least likely to indicate that that's the case are actually millennials, and Gen Zs are slightly more likely than millennials to believe that that's the case. However, they are still significantly less likely to say that than seniors are. So about 60% of Gen Zs would say that that's the case, as I mentioned before, 87% of seniors do. So this suggests that in order for the Democratic Party to continue to rely on Black women to be the backbone of this party, they have some significant work to do with younger generations to earn their trust and continue to earn their vote. We can move forward. So, so when we looked at personal concerns, though, around priorities with the young Black women in particular, the top issue of concern for millennials were hate crimes and racism. For Gen Zs, the rise in hate crimes and lack of affordable housing were tied with as a top issue, followed by COVID. And coming in second for millennials was affordable housing, followed by COVID as well. These are personal concerns for themselves and their families. You can move forward. With that, I think I will hand it over to Dr. Scott to sort of talk a little bit about the specifics with regards to this election and the grades regarding the current administration.
Thank you, Dr. DeWeaver. I figured she would hand it over to me when she got to the Trump grade. That what we found for the fourth year in a row, Black women gave the President of the United States a failing grade. In 2020, 80% of Black women gave President Trump an F, and 10% gave him a D when they were asked to rate his performance. Only 1.5% of Black women in this survey gave Trump an A grade. So he continues to get a failing grade. Next slide. So what we have here is after 4 years in office that President Trump, for Black women, continues to get a failing grade because as we've gone through these issues, we see that he has not been addressing the issues of concern to Black women. And even the new issues we have, like COVID, they feel, that he's not addressing these issues. Next slide. Okay, we also were interested in knowing about who they would select to vote, who they would select as their presidential selection. So we asked them if the election was held today, who would they vote for? And fully 90% of the women in our survey would vote for the Biden-Harris ticket, and just 4% would vote for the Trump-Pence ticket. So more than 3 out of 4 Black women plan to vote. We did find some difference in terms of how they plan to vote, but this was the first time that there were a lot of selections in terms of how do you plan to vote, because usually in the past we've asked them whether they plan to vote. But this time we find that because of the COVID and the other options that are out there, that 3 out of 4 Black women plan to vote by mail or absentee or early vote, and only 35% plan to vote in person. So, but nearly 2/3 of Black women, we asked them about after Judge, our Justice Ginsburg died. We went back and added a question about would they be more likely to vote, more enthusiastic to vote, given that the Supreme Court seat was hanging in the balance. And nearly 2/3 of Black women were concerned because we also know that they are concerned about some of the issues that they expect to see coming before the court in the next session, including the Affordable Care Act and voting rights. Next. Okay, we looked at addressing systemic racism, structural and systemic racism, and safety, that those are key issues that are driving Black women. As we've already mentioned earlier, is that one thing we saw driving through the responses was that people Black women are concerned about safety. They are concerned about their health. And so you have here the key issues driving the Black women to vote. First is a plan to reduce structural and systemic racism, 49%. 49% also policing and criminal justice reforms. And then the next category was a plan to eradicate COVID-19. So these were the top three issues that are driving Black women to vote. And, candidates need to look at uh, their platform as they sometimes ignore some of these issues. Then following that, we had Protect the Safety Net, Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. There's been a lot of discussion about that. Reducing taxes for middle class and lower income families. Reducing unemployment and underemployment. Increasing the minimum wage to at least $15 an hour. Addressing the higher mortality rate of Black women, Black infants and mothers. And so these are, when we asked them about the issues that would drive them to the polls, these were the issues that we were very much concerned about. And we could go all the way down, but in the interest of time, we'll just move on to the next slide. Okay, so as we sort of wrap up here, Black women are overwhelmingly committed to vote. 95% of the women that participated in this survey say they plan to vote in the presidential election. And we see the lines out there with all of the early voting sites. Next slide. Okay. We've already mentioned this, that more Black women plan to vote by mail, absentee, or early vote rather than in person. Next slide. And we've already mentioned this about the death of Justice Ginsburg. Black women feel like that encourages them more to vote because they are concerned about what will happen now that she's no longer with us. Next slide. Okay, we've already mentioned this also, that 90% would select the Biden-Harris ticket. Okay, so that wraps up the findings, and I'll now turn it back to Melanie Campbell.
Thank you, Avis, and thank you, Elsie, for that very, very thorough rollout of the poll results for 2020. If you, for those of you all who are out there watching, you can go to unitycampaign.org to actually get a copy of the poll results that you just heard them go through. What we want to open up from our production team, open up the area for the media that may have questions. If you could open that up and bring them on, those who want to come on. See if we have any questions. I think Nicole Killian, Killion, has her hand up. If we could open up her mic so she could ask her question. And please identify yourself and who you're with. Nicole? Did she drop?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much for doing this and for running through all the data. Two quick questions on the issue of the Supreme Court when you went back to voters post RBG to see if it would influence their vote more. Was that also taking into consideration that the former Vice President Joe Biden has said that he would name a Black woman to the high court? Was that part of the questioning or just because of the issues at stake? And then secondly, if you could talk more specifically about the disparities between older African American women and the millennials and Gen Z, as you pointed out, why you think those numbers are a little lower, and whether you expect them to have any impact in this election, considering you still have 90% of African American women who were surveyed here saying they're going to get out and support the Biden Harris ticket.
I'll take the first question about the Supreme Court. We did not have enough space on the survey to ask the question about the Biden's promise to put a Black woman on the Supreme Court. So we were focused more on the issues that would become before the Supreme Court. For example, the Affordable Care Act and voting rights and some of the other issues that we expect to come before the Supreme Court, issues that Black women were concerned about.
Absolutely. And I will just sort of begin to chime in, and others can chime in as well, about the generational differences that we saw with regards to support and feeling as if they are being well represented by the Democratic Party, the differences that we're seeing across the generations there. It's really quite interesting. As we showed, a more seasoned generations, not only, obviously, most were seniors, but even middle-aged Black women were more likely than millennials and Gen Zs to sort of agree with that answer. To me, that means that younger people definitely have more of an open mind, perhaps, and sort of shopping around and looking at different options. If you look, they also were more likely to say that they were independent than those two. It's not necessarily that they were all more likely to vote Republican, even though they were slightly more likely to indicate an interest in looking at the Republican Party. And so what I found especially interesting, if you dig even deeper and compare millennials to the Gen Zs seem to have more faith in the Democratic Party than do millennials. And what struck me, I mean, this really, honestly, this is worth an entire survey onto itself. It's really worth an entire study onto itself. It's hard to really glean a lot from one question. But what I will say, what I find is interesting, and just understanding what's been happening just in terms of contemporary issues. We know, for example, that Gen Z has been very, very active on issues of gun violence. They have been very, very strategic around really pushing for legislative changes, right? And so I would love to do further research in which, if we what I would suspect we might find if we did further research would be to see perhaps that Gen Zs are really, really interested in, maybe a slightly more perhaps even than millennials, on really getting through legislation that's meant to address the issues that they care about. And though they understand that no party is perfect, in a comparative sense, they probably are more, it looks as if they're more likely than the millennials to believe that the Democratic Party is the most persuadable party in terms of being able to push for their specific policy agenda, rather than just making their political views known in other ways. I think that, to me, is the most interesting side of this, not just the comparison between the younger generations and the older generations, but quite frankly, the split just between the younger generations.
Thank you. And also, I apologize for not identifying myself. I'm a correspondent with CBS News. Thank you again.
Thank you, Nicole. Do we have any other questions from our media? Any other questions? Okay, I don't, seeing none, I'm going to say thank you all for joining us. I wanted to see, am I wrong, or is it someone, is it Pepper Chambers? Is she asking? Anyone else asking to ask a question before I move away? I just realized it populated. Anyone else? Okay. Sheila Harris with Essence, would you like to make any closing remarks, Sheila? Or did I lose you? Okay.
Hi there. Once again, I just want to say thank you so much to your entire team, Dr. Avis, Dr. Elsie, and of course, Melanie. This has been fantastic. And of course, we want to continue to see this happen in the future. And we're just really trying to admonish everyone to get out and vote. This election is so critical and our lives depend on it. So thank you for this format.
And thank you for our partnership. And it's a sister relationship. Essence is our magazine. Many of us grew up on it, and now multiple generations. We thank you for all you all do to tell our stories.
Thank you so much.
And also to let us know what's going on with the politics, because it's about, especially when the issues around power. And when you're talking about the power of our vote, power of the sister vote, is about our leadership. It's about our influence. It's about us owning our power more and more. And so we thank the media and thank all of you all for tuning in. Thank our team at the National Coalition and Black Women's Roundtable, those who are on the back end to make this happen. And make sure you're out there. You can go to unitycampaign.org, get a copy of that, but you can also go to that site and find out. Make sure, and I would be malpractice as an organizer if I didn't say, if you have not already voted, you make sure you make a plan to vote. We see there's a major issue that showed up in this poll, and we're living it. We're living voter suppression all over this country in a vote, with folks having to stand in long lines. A good friend of mine, I think it was Latasha, said standing in a long line is voter suppression, because they knew in the primaries they were going to have long lines. So why do we not have enough poll workers, poll monitors, to be out there to make sure that they can have more polling places in our communities? So make a plan. Check your voter registration status. There's a couple more states that still have a few more days left to register. Make sure they haven't purged you from the polling places. Right?
Exactly.
We're going, they may show up at the wrong place. Make sure you know where to go vote. You can get that information on unitycampaign.org, right? And know your voting rights. And no matter what, don't get out of that line if you're showing up in person. If you don't want to take that chance of going to a polling place, do early vote. Do vote by mail, absentee. It's a voting season. It's not November 3rd. We're voting all the way up to November 3rd. And
exactly.
It has its own rules. So again, thank you for joining us. Go to unitycampaign.org, get a copy of the poll, and also make sure you vote in 2020. And y'all have a good day.